Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk coming at you for a limited time on a Thursday afternoon. Dan Lucero live in studio. Brendan Dworzinski joining me as well. And we are hanging out with you for the next half hour of programming today. That's all we've got. That's all we are bringing you today because we are handing things off to the K-State Sports Network at the bottom of this hour, 2:30, for pregame coverage of the inaugural Pop-Tarts Bowl. Okay, it's not the original edition of this bowl game. This bowl game has had many, many names, but it is the Pop-Tarts Bowl this year for the first time as Kansas State takes on North Carolina State. We're going to break it down for you here on this shortened, extremely abbreviated edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, can you remember a shorter edition of 580 Sports Talk?
There were a couple instances, I feel like, this past baseball season, like the one or two games that actually ran long for the Royals where we were on from like 5:45 to 6, and maybe that was it. But no, we don't run into a whole lot of these. You know, on the old mic'd up, Jake and Fulton used to have these bad boys all the time, those 110 Royals starts. They were done noon to 12:30 all the time. They got the lucky breaks with those. But the great thing is, if you're a K-State fan, we're all K-State all the way here. Pop-Tarts Bowl. That's the big deal today. So great time to get as much pregame prediction, as many pregame picks as we can. And I'm feeling good about this game, Dan. I'll be completely honest with you. I was going through the books last night, trying to figure out exactly who I was going to pick. The numbers, the metrics, they love K-State in this matchup. And frankly, I do too. I'm a little surprised the spread is as small as it is. So we'll get into all the breakdown there. But look, I don't think either of us or anyone else is going to complain about us two Wahoos getting out here at 2:30 and getting some, Wyatt, Stan, and the rest of the crew either.
Yeah, so we'll enjoy the pregame, 2-hour pregame show, and then the kickoff again is scheduled for 4:45 this evening from Orlando as K-State plays NC State. First time ever that these two foes have met on the gridiron. The winner gets to eat a live Pop-Tart. I don't know how I feel about that still. I'm still a little iffy on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've put some gross, crass, nasty things in my stomach before. This one's a little too cannibal-y to me. Like, it's the wording. It's the semantics of it. The live Pop-Tart, the life-size Pop-Tart. Why not just say a huge Pop-Tart or something like that? A Pop-Tart trophy. Why do you have to give it personification?
Yeah,
That's a little uncomfortable.
I'd even be okay with human-sized Pop-Tart. Like, that would be fine. But no, do not make somebody eat an anthropomorphic Pop-Tart with a face. Like, I don't like that. I don't want any part of that. No, thank you. But that's what's at stake tonight. The winner gets that. They get a very cool trophy. And if K-State wins, it's a 9-win season for the Cats. I guess I might start there with this game. You know, bowls are what they are. They're as important for a program as that program makes it. They can represent different things to different programs, particularly these outside of the New Year's Six. You'd consider it a second-tier bowl game, certainly in relation to where K-State was last year in the Sugar Bowl. But the bowl game is whatever you make it. The bowl game is sometimes it's what the circumstances dictate, right? Like for this K-State team in particular, they're going to run a lot of young guys out there for the first time. They're going to see Avery Johnson as the starter. They're going to see some new faces, particularly in the defensive backfield. They're going to be some new faces at wide receiver, given some of the transfers, some of the opt-outs. It's going to be a bit of a different looking team. It might even be schematically a little bit different with Connor Riley calling the plays, with Colin Klein headed to Texas A&M. That was actually officially announced by Texas A&M earlier today. We've known it for a long time, but it was made official earlier. That all being said, development is obviously important, and Avery Johnson having the keys is obviously important. I wonder how important it is for K-State to win this game so that they don't go into an offseason with Kansas having had a better record than them. I wonder if that's any part of the equation. I'm sure it is for some K-State fans, but I wonder if some of the Wildcats maybe saw KU win the Guaranteed Rate Bowl and say, hey, if they got 9 wins, we better have 9 wins.
I think there's something to that for sure. And, we talked a lot over the course of the year with this K-State team when it comes to adjusting expectations and goals as the year goes on. Because if you go into a season and you say, hey, can we get to, would it be a successful year? We're talking about this in, I even picked K-State going into the year to be a 9-win team this season. I thought they might be a little bit down from a year ago, a decent number of personnel changes, especially back into the defense. I said, hey, 9 wins, that's a good year for this Kansas State team. But the 9 wins they could end up with are so different than the 9 I was expecting. Like, I was thinking this is a team that was going to contend for a Big 12 title, and they did, but the way it ended was, it didn't feel like they had great odds to make it to the Big 12 championship game. The way they got there was so much different than the way we expected. The struggles this team had were so much different than the ones we thought they could possibly face over the course of the year. So you went from, hey, 9 wins would be a really good year to, oh my God, maybe this is, 8 wins in the regular season, but this is not the most satisfying 8 wins, to now you're in a position where this 9th win might be the most important one of them all, because it's about development and it is about the future. And while we don't know exactly what Connor Riley's role is going to look like going forward, and granted, it might just be you're back to offensive line coach after the bowl game, will make the offensive coordinator hire, everything else remains the same. That's one outcome. Maybe there's an outcome in which Connor Riley does an incredible job calling plays for Avery Johnson in this game, and it ends up, okay, you're now offensive line / co-offensive coordinator because you did such a good job. We've got to make sure no one else is going to come in here and poach you, because we know how highly thought of Connor Riley is in the assistant coach sphere in college football. So you've got that to keep an eye on. But I think the most important part of this game, and the most important, the way that this can still end up being a positive season, this is a good NC State team. This is a good defensive team. They're well coached. Dave Doran. I've said for a long time that I have NC State on my do not bet list because they are so frustrating to me. I seem to always be on the wrong side of it. But I think in kind of a twisted way, this team is almost always in every single game. Even if you think, no, they don't have the kind of athletes, they often play up to their competition. Sometimes they do play down to it as well. But I expect this to be a difficult game, and certainly a difficult matchup for K-State on both sides of the ball, plus special teams. But if Avery Johnson goes out there and he looks like the prince who was promised, if he looks like, okay, that's why this dude is one of the highest ranked recruits in K-State history, that's why this dude was Elite 11 his senior year at Mays High, all of a sudden you feel great about this year, right? That, yeah, maybe we didn't go back to the Big 12 championship game. Maybe we had some disappointing losses, some disappointing moments we shouldn't have had, we didn't expect to have. But we got to the end of the year. We found out the rest of our coaching staff is still good. Maybe the wide receivers, who still have a couple years left, are able to show even a little bit more development. And now we know that our quarterback can be that guy over the course of a full game, not just a half or a package sprinkled in here and there where he's mostly a running threat, not even a passer. If you get that kind of proof and that kind of evidence in this game, then I think you take all the other examples, all the other data from the rest of the year, and you kind of have to say this season was a success, because now you are set up for long-term progress as a program.
Yeah, Avery Johnson is the headline story in this game, and what his performance, one way or another, I think is going to be the primary takeaway for Kansas State from this game. We obviously saw glimpses of his running ability, his ability to change a game with his legs, which he did against Texas Tech earlier this season, which, God, the way they separate out the bowl season, that feels like it happened a year ago. That feels like it happened so long ago, but it was this very same year, and Avery Johnson's freshman campaign. Now he gets to start, and I would imagine that means with about a month to prepare, or maybe even a little more than a month, the full playbook is going to be at his command. And that's what will be most interesting to see, because clearly when he was the number 2 quarterback to Will Howard, there was Avery Johnson stuff. Like, if we got Avery Johnson in the game, this is what we're going to run. These are the running concepts we like with him and his speed, vis-a-vis Will Howard's running ability, which was there, but they were obviously different kind of runners. And here's the passing stuff we feel comfortable with regard to where Avery Johnson is as a passer, where he is with his development. Now the whole playbook is his. And I am really fascinated to see how he throws the ball, because I think you're dazzled by the speed. We saw his running ability win a game for K-State, but now we're going to get to see him air it out a little bit. And I'm not saying that he's going to go and just throw bomb after bomb, but he can. I mean, if you saw any of this kid in high school, I was fortunate to see him play in his senior year at Mays High in person. The arm talent is there. He can throw it. He can place the deep ball. He can throw the long out. He can make some big time throws that can keep things moving. Now it'll be a different looking receiving core for K-State. Ben Sinnott, who was such a big part of the passing game when Will Howard was a quarterback, he's opted out of this game. Phillip Brooks has opted out of this game. So that was a reliable target, a veteran target. RJ Garcia, obviously in the transfer portal, he's picked his new home. So it's going to be some different guys. Maybe it's a big showcase for a fellow freshman, Jace Brown, in this contest. He, in particular, had one really impressive catch of an Avery Johnson deep ball. I want to say, was that the TCU or the UCF game? It was one of the two where Johnson aired it out and found Jace Brown on a deep route on the sideline at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Maybe somebody can help me out in the YouTube comments or on the text line, but I was there for that game, and I remember that throw and that connection between the two freshmen. Maybe we get to see a little bit more of that. Maybe we get to see the future of the tight end position tonight. Maybe a little more Garrett Oakley, who I know the coaching staff is really high on. So what shape the passing game takes is going to be really, really interesting. And I'm not saying that I expect him to go out and automatically be the best version that we're ever going to see of Avery Johnson. But I will say this, USC got 6 touchdown passes out of Miller Moss in the Holiday Bowl last night. So there is precedent for a freshman in his first start going out and lighting up a bowl game. We just saw it last night. I would not in the least be surprised if we see it again tonight.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And this is, again, the kind of opportunity in a bowl game. We talked a lot on the show on Wednesday about how the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, KU, UNLV, that is what, as a fan, you want. Two teams that almost never play each other, teams that had very few guys who opted out, two teams that really wanted to win. That's the kind of college football experience you want from a bowl game. But the other side of that is you get to see, are the guys we have coming back, are the guys we haven't seen a whole lot from, are they capable of making big plays? And play calling wise, why not cut loose? Why not? There's no worry about putting things on film in this game aside from week 1 of next season. Maybe that's all really you're worrying about with, should we put stuff on film? So why not cut loose? Why not try to air the ball out? Why not try to allow your quarterback? Now, if you end up in a situation where the offensive line is having a terrible day and Johnson's getting killed, maybe you're not going to try a bunch of 7-step drops or something. But this is the opportunity to let him air it out, see what he can do. Use it in a way like NFL teams have more and more used training camp and preseason NFL games. And that is, what can we get away with? What can we try to get away with? Remember Patrick Mahomes' first training camp as the number 1 starter and the Mike Florio hit pieces and the nonsense all over that? He's throwing tons of interceptions. Should the Chiefs have kept Alex Smith? Well, yeah, but the games don't mean anything in training camp. The scrimmages don't. The exhibition games don't. And this bowl game, it means something. We talked about what the value of it can be, but why not see what you've got in the passing game with Avery Johnson? Because there's still so much development left in his game, but wouldn't you like to know what your starting baseline is? Wouldn't you like to know what his connection looks like going down the field, using the intermediate and deep thirds of the field to try to attack it right now? So that's where I am with this offense, is why not cut it loose and see what you've got? Your future, the face of the franchise, if you will, for K-State football right now is Avery Johnson. That is what you are building the next 2, maybe 3 seasons around if you are Kansas State. His success, his development, his growth, and the other pieces around him, because we think he is going to end up being that good of a player, that good of a quarterback, maybe one of the best that K-State has ever seen. He definitely, I think it's fair to say this, has that kind of potential. We know how good some of those quarterbacks have been for K-State over the years. So why not see what you've got? This is not the time to be conservative. I think Kansas State fans, and y'all can correct me if you feel differently about this, but there was a lot of talk over the course of the year when he would come in that, why are we only running power? Why are we only doing this? Why don't we have an expanded package for Avery Johnson? If you were going to open up the whole playbook, this is the time to do it. Absolutely, without question, right now is the time to do it. Particularly
given that NC State had one of the best rushing defenses in the country this year, though that will be diminished. They won't have their starting nose tackle, C.J. Clark, who entered the transfer portal. They won't have Peyton Wilson either. I believe did he win the Bednarik, or did he win the it was a major award that Peyton Wilson won, their star linebacker? Was it the Bednarik?
It was, and it's going to take me a moment to find this here. I don't remember which award he won.
He won.
I'm having a hard time.
He won the Bednarik and he won the Butkus.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was confused. It was the Bednarik or the Butkus. Bednarik, best linebacker. Butkus best linebacker. Bednarik, best defensive player. He won them both. and he's not playing. So that's obviously a big hit to NC State's rush defense. But again, a rush defense that was outstanding throughout the year. You're going to need to throw the football. You're going to need to move it through the air. The other aspect of this on the defensive side for K-State, and we talked a little bit about this with Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com yesterday on the show. Last we saw K-State's defense, they were embarrassed. There's no other way to put it. They were embarrassingly bad against Iowa State. And yes, they're missing some components from that. Kobe Savage and Will Lee, obviously in the transfer portal, along with Nate Matlack. We won't see them. Those are really the only big absences for K-State that were like regulars throughout the year. So I would expect that group to come out and be very aggressive, be very physical, and try and end this season on a high note. If anybody's got to take it personally, I think it's those guys.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. And that makes the quarterback matchup on the other side really interesting because you're going to see Brennan Armstrong in this one. Backup quarterback, MJ Morris for NC State, played a few games in October. He ended up deciding to take a red shirt instead, didn't play the rest of the season. He headed into the transfer portal. Armstrong, the transfer from Virginia, where he was really good for a couple years, then had a really down year last season, transfers into NC State. He was not good in the first portion of the season. He got hurt. I think it was against Louisville, or he at least was put on the bench for a while. First half of the season, he was completing right around just barely over 50% of his passes. 5 games, he had under 1,000 yards passing in that stretch. Touchdown pass wise in those first 5 games, 5 touchdowns thrown, 6 interceptions. I mean, it was ugly for a guy who NC State had a lot of hype for, replacing Devin Leary, who had transferred out and gone to Kentucky. Well, ever since he returned full-time to the starting job back on November 11th against Wake Forest, 2 road games on a home game against a good North Carolina team. North Carolina State went 3-0. They haven't lost since the last game of September. 334, 203, and then only 113 yards passing in one of those games. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 650 yards in that stretch. And by the way, he's a good running threat as well. He's run for over 200 yards, right around the 200-yard mark. Yeah, just over 200 in the last 3 weeks, including a 96-yard performance on the road against Wake Forest in a blowout win. He is a good weapon, and he is somebody who is able to make plays. So the question becomes, if you're Kansas State, who are you facing? Are you facing early season Brennan Armstrong, or are you facing late season Brennan Armstrong? And is he going to be that same guy after having several weeks off due to the hiatus after the end of the regular season? So I'm really fascinated by the quarterback matchup in this one going both ways. But yeah, I mean, it frankly comes down to, I don't mean to be too rude about this, but like, where's your dignity level, Kansas State defense? Because do you want, and this is a very, I would say, if I'm your defensive coordinator, if I'm Joe Klanderman, I'm trying to talk to this team, get them ready for this matchup. It is very simple to me. Who do you want to be remembered as? My defensive unit, my 2023 defense, what do you want to be remembered as? A team that went out with your head held high, playing a great game in a bowl game, getting your program to 9 wins? Or do you want to be the group that was truly, utterly embarrassed against Iowa State? Because it's going to be one or the other after this game. Which one do you want to be? And hopefully it's the former.
We're going to take a very short break here on the program. We're going to come back, give you our final predictions for the Pop-Tarts Bowl before we hand things off to the K-State Sports Network here at the bottom of the hour on this abbreviated edition of 580 Sports Talk here on 580 WIBW. We are wrapping up this shortened version of 580 Sports Talk with our predictions for tonight's Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. 25th ranked K-State, 18th ranked NC State. The first start in the career of Avery Johnson. How's it going to go down, Brendan?
All right, I'm on K-State in this one. I mentioned at the very top that the metrics like K-State quite a bit. Tracer from Stats Perform, they've got K-State by a several points favorite. SP Plus from ESPN, they've got K-State 6 points ahead of NC State. I like the Cats in this one. Depending on where you look, the spread is either 2 or 2.5. I took it a 2 last night. I think K-State's going to cover this one, and I do think that the Wildcats are going to let Avery Johnson cut it loose in this game. I certainly would if I was in their position. And the point we just made about the defense, too, this is not a poorly coached team. This is not a team with a poor culture, no matter what you want to say about the number of guys who entered the transfer portal or maybe the bad vibes at the end of the year, especially in that loss against Iowa State. I think this team is going to be ready. I think they are well coached, and they're going to show that in this game. And I think they're going to put up a pretty impressive performance. Not quite to the degree when they blew out LSU a couple years ago in the Texas Bowl, but I will take K-State. Give me the Cats, let's say 27-21 over North Carolina State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
I like K-State in this one, too. What it comes down to for me is I trust Avery Johnson. I think he can be really good right away in this start. I think K-State will find ways to get the best out of him as a passer while still utilizing his outstanding running ability. And I think that combination is going to allow K-State, who had one of the best offenses in the country this year, to put up big numbers behind that great offensive line one more time. Give me K-State in this one. I will say 30-24. The Wildcats bring the Pop-Tarts Bowl trophy back to Manhattan. Enjoy the game tonight. We got pregame coverage coming up in a matter of seconds. We will have a full show tomorrow from 2 to 6. Brendan and I will be back with you. We'll break down the result of this game. We'll preview Chiefs Bengals, and we will crown a What Is Wrong With You Champion of the Year for 2023. Hope you will join us for that tomorrow. Until then, for Brendan Wierzinski, I'm Dan Lucero. This has been 580 Sports Talk. The Pop-Tarts Bowl is next.